Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. So, Ahsoka Season 2 is going to begin filming in spring of 2025. Something we've known for some time, which has now been corroborated by bestbinbulletin.com. They said this: "It's been over a year since the Ahsoka series was airing on Disney+, and Lucasfilm have confirmed a second season is in the works. Over the last couple of months, I've heard spring 2025 as a window of filming. They say the month of May has come up once or twice, but April is the one they've been hearing the most frequently. Either way, spring of 2025. Not too surprising if you've been following my updates the last couple of months. But yesterday, I responded to this news with 2 words, a question for the fandom: who's hyped? A lot of folks expressed anticipation and hype, but there were some who were saying they're more cautiously optimistic, some even going as far as saying they're not excited because of Dave Filoni. And this is a symptom of a wider issue I think is worth addressing. This past summer, a couple of months ago, I made a video with Star Force 1, where we discussed the reasons modern Disney Star Wars canon is pretty flawed, pretty inconsistent, and connected to this, the conversation of why fans have begun to turn on Dave Filoni, someone who was once considered the successor of George Lucas, the lawkeeper of all things Star Wars canon, the one person who was said to understand this universe better than anyone else at current Lucasfilm under Disney. But the fandom's relationship with Dave started souring around 2021, decisions made on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, but some haven't been happy with him for some time, many years prior to this, going back to decisions in the Clone Wars and Rebels, citing how his contributions in the animated shows have contradicted or watered down concepts that were better explored in the expanded universe. I don't necessarily share that aspect of it. I've loved the animated shows, Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, but that is a position that has become more pronounced. And there's also the fact fans are pretty disappointed he's been a huge sequel apologist. And with that comes the fear that he's going to tie the Mandoverse into the sequel trilogy. It's not an if, they're already doing it. John and Dave have admitted they're doing this. I don't have as much of a problem if they want to make the sequel trilogy look better, make some aspects make more sense. I think that's pretty much where we're going. The idea the sequel trilogy is going to be retconned in 2024 is pretty silly. They're doubling down. But what I think really put the nail in the coffin for those who are starting to question Filoni's creative force was his involvement with the Acolyte. And now that we're a few months on, in retrospect, it's kind of remarkable some of the events that went down. And one tidbit, which has really gone under the radar in the news cycle, is that Lucasfilm, in a very subtle way, started putting the blame on Dave Filoni for the fan backlash and the nosedive in ratings. So what we already knew is that Dave Filoni was responsible for the idea of the witch coven. He is the one who went to Leslye Headland and told her, quote, "You know, not all witches in Star Wars are Night Sisters." And that encouraged her and gave her the confidence to explore an idea beyond the conventional Dathomirian witch model, and instead explored a different aspect of witches in the galaxy far, far away, the execution of which was anything but well received in the fandom. On top of this, we know Dave Filoni was involved in the creative process. As CCO, Chief Creative Officer, he often had Leslye bounce ideas off of him, and he approved a lot of it. And if you guys remember, even in the marketing for the show, they placed Dave Filoni across from Leslye Headland in a promotional YouTube video titled Conversations. And some would argue that video posted on May 30th, 2024 was a really poor marketing choice. The backlash was instant. Fans didn't want to see the guy who was driving a huge part of the future of Star Wars storytelling sat across from a showrunner who to many is responsible for a show that is considered the worst on Disney+. The endorsement didn't sit well for fans of projects like Ahsoka, and that's why I'm seeing a lot of apprehension for the creative direction of future projects like Ahsoka Season 2, even though it's unrelated. And Dave Filoni has a very laissez-faire approach to Leslye Headland's suggestions, encouraging her and other creatives to move away from what Star Wars conventionally should be, but instead taking the approach of personally molding a Star Wars story around the showrunner. A pinch of this is inevitable in any show or movie, but telling them that personal direction should take precedent over canon and lore is not the best recipe for a Star Wars story. But then it got worse, because after the first couple of episodes, after viewership started dropping and fans were expressing their concerns and disapproval of the show, One of the writers of The Acolyte's 4th episode, Claire Keischel, raised eyebrows by subtly pointing the blame at Dave, mentioning that Filoni, quote, gives notes on all the scripts and ultimately approves them along with the Lucasfilm team, implying that he may be partially responsible for the show's decline in quality. And I noticed it in real time too. As someone who covers daily Star Wars news, I started realizing in interviews with Leslye Headland and a few other creatives who worked on the project, it went from being all about Leslye Headland's vision to subtly making the implication Dave Filoni was responsible for a lot of those choices. They didn't want to make it too obvious, but the fandom read between the lines. And all of a sudden, Dave was thrown under the bus. Do I think Dave Filoni is bad for Star Wars? Ultimately, while there have been some slip-ups, I'm going to say no, because when he's at his best, he's produced some of my favourite Star Wars stories under Disney. But does that mean everything he's worked on has been perfect? No. I think this idea that he's George Lucas 2.0 is ultimately setting unrealistic expectations, and also diminishes the way we see him as a creative in his own right, because he's not going to have exactly the same ideas as George. He uses them as framework. That's what he said time and again. He's even gone as far as saying he still consults with George, and George has provided critical feedback. One of the most fascinating things Dave has said is the door is still wide open if George wanted to contribute something more to the Star Wars universe. I don't think he would, but from the sounds of it, George isn't entirely detached. But it doesn't mean Dave Filoni is literally following George Lucas with every choice he makes. Some George Lucas concepts will be his baseline, but he's still going to experiment and still going to expand the universe. Does that mean sometimes decisions are gonna suck? Yes. But I don't think it takes away from those projects and characters he created that fans really appreciate and love. So I'm still excited for Ahsoka's 2nd season, even if I disagree with a lot of decisions Dave Filoni has made. I think even with some of the clunkiness in the last couple of episodes, the story of Ahsoka's 1st season was so strong that I'm really excited for the continuation of some of those characters in season 2. Baylan Skoll, if they recast, Shin Hati, a Boken, non-orthodox Jedi who's now been abandoned, where is that path gonna lead her? Ahsoka, Sabine, the New Republic. Yes, we have to wait until 2026. Sure, there is a bad taste in the mouths of many fans following the Acolytes, but like I always say, Star Wars is about hope. We will see a renaissance of this franchise, and I don't think it's as doom and gloom as some have been led to believe. But what do you guys think of this? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and why not check out our Patreon page? You get early access to videos, my podcast is on there, interviews with some of the best actors in the galaxy far, far away. Link is down below. Please consider supporting independent channels like myself. I'm not sponsored, I'm just a passionate Star Wars fan who is fortunate enough to have this amazing platform and an even more amazing community. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you, always.